Number 9. Amanda Logue and Jason Andrews. On May 15, 2010, a Florida tattoo artist named Dennis Scooter Abrahamson hosted an adult party at his new Port Richey home. He was found dead on his massage table the next day with multiple stab wounds and gruesome blunt force trauma injuries to his head. An investigation led police to Amanda Logue, who Dennis had hired to work at the party under her stage name, Sunny Day. In the days leading up to the murder, Amanda exchanged dozens of text messages with another adult actor, Jason Andrews, detailing their sinister plot to rob and kill Dennis. The pair had met on a film set the previous year and fell in love, even though Amanda was married with a daughter at the time. After the party Dennis had, Andrews repeatedly plunged a knife into the host and then bludgeoned his skull with a sledgehammer. Even seasoned detectives were horrified by the gruesome aftermath, according to Kyle Peltz, who recently produced a CNN special revisiting the case. The couple stole $6,000 in cash and their victims' credit cards and fled the state. When they were apprehended weeks later, Amanda tried blaming the murder entirely on Andrews, but the evidence showed that they planned and carried out the gruesome crime together. Amanda received a 40-year prison sentence, while Andrews is spending the rest of his life behind bars, with no possibility of parole. Number 8. James DeMaggio and Michelle Michaud. After being evicted from their apartment in 1997, James DeMaggio and his then-girlfriend, Michelle Michaud, began living out of their Dodge Caravan. They were both habitual methamphetamine users who idolized prolific serial killers and spent their time cruising around Sacramento in search of women to victimize. The couple referred to these missions as adventures and huntings, as if terrorizing innocent strangers was merely a game or a hobby. One morning, they abducted 22-year-old Vanessa Sampson while she was walking to work. By then, the twisted pair had already brutally assaulted several women and had refitted the interior of their van as a mobile torture chamber. They bound Sampson and subjected her to unthinkable abuse before strangling her to death and dumping her body off a remote highway. By the time police caught up with the couple for Sampson's murder, they were already in custody for kidnapping and sexually assaulting another young woman at gunpoint. Inside their minivan, detectives found items that were used to restrain and torment their victims, along with a book about serial killer Gerald Gallego, who had gone on a murder spree with his wife 2 decades earlier in the same area. As more evidence came to light, it became clear that DeMaggio and Michaud were obsessed with Gallego and wanted to achieve his level of notoriety. They were both convicted of first-degree murder, along with charges relating to their other crimes, and were sentenced to death for their crimes. A court upheld their sentences in 2018, and they remain on death row. Number 7. Alicia Woodward and John Esposito. 18-year-old Alicia Woodward and her 21-year-old boyfriend John Esposito skipped town in 1996 after falling more than $2,000 behind on the rent for their Pemberton Township, New Jersey home. When Esposito's car broke down outside of a North Carolina grocery store, the pair carjacked 85-year-old retired librarian Lola Davis. They drove to Georgia, bludgeoned Davis to death in a field, and continued to Alabama, where they abandoned her car. Weeks later, the bodies of 91-year-old Lawrence Snyder and his 86-year-old wife, Marguerite, were found in Texas. Somebody had beaten them to death with a tire iron and then used their ATM card in several states, withdrawing more than $1,000. Police in Colorado caught Esposito and Woodward driving the slain couple's car in Mesa Verde National Park. It was later revealed that the killers had approached their victims, claiming that they were having car trouble, and the Snyders had agreed to drive them to a hotel. Investigators searched the suspect's abandoned home and found several handwritten ramblings by Esposito, stating that he was going to live off of other people and Satan was going to take care of him. He was convicted of murder and is currently sitting on death row while Woodward is serving a life sentence for her role in the gruesome slayings. Number 6. Michelle Hetzel and Brandon Bloss. In 2000, 18-year-old Michelle Hetzel began having an affair with a 19-year-old Eastern Pennsylvania woman named Devin Guzman. Hetzel's husband, 25-year-old Brandon Bloss, knew about the relationship and was jealous but tolerated it. At the time, Devin was also in a relationship and was living with her partner. Hetzel proposed, but Devin refused to part ways with her other partner. Drama ensued between the two couples. At one point, Devin disappeared. Hetzel acted concerned and helped search for her, but she knew all along where her ex-lover was and why nobody had seen or heard from her in a while. The chaos ended with Devin being found dead in her car with her throat slit in a local parking lot. In the vehicle's trunk, police found a pair of bloody jeans belonging to Brandon Bloss, along with other evidence tying him and Hetzel to the murder. A forensic dentist identified a bite mark on Brandon's arm as likely being caused by Devin. Bloss's lawyer argued that his wife killed Devin after being rejected for another woman. Hetzel's attorneys claimed that Bloss murdered the young woman because he was jealous of the time and money his wife spent on her. They were both convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Hetzel appealed her case, but the court upheld the conviction. Number 5. The Lonely Hearts Killers. Single mother of two, Martha Beck was living in Florida when she met Raymond Fernandez in 1947 through a Lonely Hearts ad she had placed seeking companionship. They soon got engaged, and when she lost her job, Martha traveled to New York and appeared on Raymond's doorstep. She left her entire life behind, including her kids, whom she gave up to the Salvation Army. By then, Fernandez had left his marriage and 4 kids behind and had started dabbling in voodoo. He thought the rituals made him irresistible to women and saw Martha's willingness to give up her kids as a sign of her devotion to him. The couple soon embarked on a disturbing series of murders, using single ads to lure their victims. Martha sometimes posed as Raymond's sister to make the woman they targeted feel safe. Dubbed the Lonely Hearts Killers, they murdered at least 3 people in 1949 alone, including a toddler. Martha had a ferocious temper and often got jealous of the victims. She forbade Raymond from going all the way with them, but he frequently crossed that line and sometimes even carried on actual relationships with their targets. When Martha caught her partner in bed with a woman named Janet Faye, she proceeded to bludgeon the 66-year-old with a hammer in a fit of rage. Raymond then strangled Faye to death. At one point during their sickening crime spree, the couple stayed with an unsuspecting single mother named Delphine Downing near Grand Rapids, Michigan. They drugged the 28-year-old, whose toddler became alarmed at seeing their mother in an incoherent state. To silence the little one's cries, Martha drowned the child. Meanwhile, Raymond fatally shot Downing. They buried the bodies in the basement. Concerned neighbors realized that something abnormal was happening and contacted police, who took Beck and Fernandez into custody. Raymond initially confessed to the murders, but later retracted his statement. Detectives connected the pair to 17 murders, but they were only ever prosecuted for Janet Faye's death. They were both convicted and were executed in 1951. Number 4. Jacqueline Williams and Fidel Caffey. 28-year-old Deborah Evans was 9 months pregnant with her 4th child in 1995 when her unborn child's father, Laverne Ward, showed up at her home in Addison, Illinois, with his cousin, Jacqueline Williams, and her boyfriend, Fidel Caffey. At the time, Evans had an order of protection against Ward, but she let the visitors in anyway. Ward offered $2,000 in exchange for the baby she was about to give birth to. When Evans refused, Caffey shot her. The 2 men then stabbed her daughter to death. As the mother-to-be fought for her life, the group cut her open and extracted the fetus from her womb, killing her in the process. Williams cleaned and dressed the baby boy, and the killers fled the scene, leaving one of Evans's kids alive with his slain mother and sibling. They abducted her other surviving child and took him to the home of Patrice Scott, who was unaware of the brutal murders and agreed to care for the boy overnight. After his kidnappers left, the terrified little boy told Scott what had happened. Sadly, he failed to reach safety before the group returned and killed him out of fear that he could be a witness against them. Detectives determined that Williams, a mother of 3, was unable to have any more kids, but that Kathy was pressuring her to somehow make it happen. She faked a pregnancy while co-conspiring with Kathy and Ward to steal Evans's baby. Williams and Kathy initially received the death penalty, while Ward was sentenced to life plus 60 years. In 2003, the Illinois governor commuted all of the state's death sentences to life in prison. Number 3. Charles Starkweather and Carol Ann Fugate. Charles Starkweather was 18 years old when he met 13-year-old Carol Ann Fugate in Lincoln, Nebraska in 1956. He committed his first murder the following year when a gas station clerk refused to sell him a stuffed animal that he wanted to buy for Carol but couldn't afford. Starkweather's life derailed shortly thereafter when he lost his job and couldn't pay rent. One night he went to Carol's house and killed her parents and baby sister. For the next several days, the couple continued to live in the home among the decomposing bodies. They attached a sign to the front door stating that they had the flu to ward off visitors. Carol's grandmother eventually became suspicious and called the police. By then, the pair had fled to a farm in another part of the state and murdered the owner. After that, they hitched a ride with a teenage couple and killed them. Starkweather and Fugate continued their crime spree throughout Nebraska and Wyoming, claiming at least 4 more lives along the way. Authorities launched a full-scale manhunt, eventually leading to the couple's surrender. At first, Carol was depicted as one of Starkweather's victims, but the evidence made it clear that she was a willing accomplice in the brutal murders and that she had several opportunities to safely leave Starkweather, but chose not to. She was released in 1976 for good behavior after serving 17 years of a life sentence, but was denied a pardon. Carol remarried and has lived a seemingly normal life since regaining her freedom. She's a retired janitor and was last known to be living in Michigan after becoming widowed in a car accident. Starkweather received a death sentence and was executed in the electric chair in 1959. Number 2. Alton Coleman and Deborah Brown. Alton Coleman was born in Waukegan, Illinois in 1955 to a single mother who worked 3 jobs. Life dealt him a difficult hand of cards from the get-go, and he never held a steady job after dropping out of middle school. But Coleman's rough upbringing was no excuse for his criminal lifestyle, which saw him convicted of a half a dozen sex crimes between 1973 and 1983. The following year, Coleman and his girlfriend Deborah Brown went on a murderous crime spree spanning 6 states throughout the American Midwest. Over the course of less than 2 months, they committed 8 murders, 7 rapes, 3 kidnappings, and 14 armed robberies. The couple's first known murder victim was 9-year-old Vanita Wheat from Kenosha, Wisconsin. From there, they went to Gary, Indiana, where they abducted 2 girls between the ages of 7 and 9. One of the victims escaped, but the other was strangled to death. Coleman and Brown went on to kill at least 5 more people while stealing cars to avoid detection. The FBI was so intent on capturing the couple that they created an 11th spot on their 10 most wanted list, specifically for Coleman. Authorities apprehended the pair in Illinois after a childhood friend recognized Coleman at a park. They were both sentenced to death. Coleman was executed in 2002, while Brown's sentence was commuted to life due to her low IQ, even though she had shown no remorse for her crimes. In fact, at one point, she had given the judge a note admitting to one of the murders and saying that she didn't give a damn and had fun out of it. The couple's motive for the brutal slayings remains a mystery to this day. Number 1. Ray and Faye Copeland. Cattle farmer Ray Copeland met and married his wife Faye in Missouri in 1940 after serving prison time for fraud. But the punishment wasn't enough to dissuade him from his criminal lifestyle. Copeland's criminal record made it difficult for him to buy livestock, so he and Faye began taking in drifters and hiring them as farmhands and persuading them to purchase cattle with phony checks. As soon as the transaction was completed, they shot their unsuspecting victim dead. The couple murdered at least 5 vagabonds between 1986 and 1989, but are thought to be responsible for as many as 7 other murders. They were finally arrested after one of their employees saw human bones on the property and contacted the police. Faye claimed in court that she suffered from battered wife syndrome and that Ray had abused her for most of their 50-year marriage. But her sob story failed to secure a plea deal like she had hoped. In 1993, at the ages of 69 and 76, the Copelands became the oldest couple ever sentenced to death. Ray died of natural causes later that year. Faye's sentence was eventually commuted to life in prison. She died from a stroke in 2002, shortly after being paroled into hospice care. Thanks for watching. If you saw a couple drive off while yelling at a seemingly distressed elderly woman in the back seat of their car, would you try to follow the vehicle to learn more about what's going on, dial 911, or figure that it's not your business and stay out of it? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe.